whilst everybody else arrives. Engamana, engawefa, tena kotokato. No mai haramai. Eko anate ngako, au te amia kia koto, kia te whakanui I te kopapa o tera, no reira aku rangatira, tena koto, tena koto. To the esteemed of the four winds, I acknowledge you and welcome you. I am joyful that we have arrived to support this event. On that note, my esteemed colleagues and families, I greet you, I greet you, I greet you all. Ko Rachel Tapera Tokuingoa, my name is Rachel. It's my pleasure and honor to extend a warm welcome to you all this evening as you've come to join us celebrate this Neurodiversity Week. It truly is an honor to be here on this special occasion for us to be raising awareness, promoting inclusion, and also just embracing neurodiversity within our communities. So before we dive into this program today, please join me in this karakia to open. Hei noi tato, whakataka te ho ki te uru, whakataka te ho ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei, Maori ora. All right, thank you so much. So this event is the very first webinar hosted by the Migrant Neuro-Inclusion Network, and we're thrilled to have you here this evening. Our mission is simple yet powerful. We seek to empower neurodivergent migrants in Aotearoa, New Zealand, by advocating for improved access to culturally safe and comprehensive support services, as well as fostering an environment that celebrates neurodiversity and enables personal growth. So this network was established by 4 passionate individuals who recognize the unique challenges that are faced by neurodivergent migrants here in Aotearoa. We understood that the context and the needs of neurodivergent immigrants can often be overlooked, and there's a real need to be bridging the gaps in support and inclusion. So it's our vision that, you know, we continue having these conversations, continue to advocate, continue to connect and have these discussions so that at least we do contribute to a more inclusive and an understanding Aotearoa for all neurodivergent people. So yeah, without saying too much, I'll just have to leave this space to our panel of experts who have kindly, who have generously, you know, given us their time to be sharing their experiences with neurodiversity, their expertise, you know, working in this space, and we acknowledge that. So first on the line of speakers today is Osman Hassan. I'll let them introduce themselves. Over to you, Osman.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Well, first, thanks for having me here, because I think it's the first time that I have been given the opportunity to speak with others who share the same concern as I do in my research, or also in the general, the everyday life. I'm obsessed with this idea of equal opportunities to people from my background as in the neurodivergent community, equal access to health, education, just the everyday life that we all think about. So thanks for having me. My name is Osman. I'm originally from Sudan. I came to New Zealand about 21 years ago. 2004, I arrived in New Zealand. And so I'm dyslexic. So I have been in the neurodivergent community. And so my, because I don't have, I only have a few minutes to share with you. So I'll just be brief. I'm doing my research in disability and intersectionality. So how people from migrant community who are also from disability background can enjoy equal rights, equal access to health care services in New Zealand, but also including education and other things. And it's been an eye-opening for me, because I've always thought that I was the only person who was excluded sometimes because of my race, sometimes because of my disability. But I was able to see that it's actually it's a community thing. That's the whole community is facing similar problems that I have been facing for the last 20 years. And so I talk to parents who have children with autism, and they have kindly shared their experience with me, being a parent of a child with disability, but also from migrant community. And so I was able to see the intersection between disability, but also other social factor that was also impacting their access to health services, for example, even to disability services, because I learned in my research that within the disability community, there are still different layers of difficulties that people find, and even their parents. So I have been involved in that space for some time. I come from a human rights background, so I've just been looking forward to do my PhD this year and co-design a grassroots leadership model with people from the neurodivergent community, from the migrant community specifically, and trying to understand how we can co-design that theory of change together, and how we can ensure a better future where we all have a better access to services. So I'm more in the social model of disability rather than the medical. So that's kind of my background in brief, but I don't know how much time I have left, but I just didn't want to get excited and start a whole topic. That's what I was saying to Rachel before. So I just wanted to be brief and explain briefly. But in my experience, I did have these difficulties. For example, going to universities, I was going to class with no access to reasonable accommodation. So I would have classmates who had the same diagnosis as mine, but they were able to get the resources I wasn't able to, because within the migrant community, we don't have an organization or a support service that would advocate for us and make that process easier. So somehow I had a worse outcome in the academic. Like I studied as hard as everyone else, sometimes even harder. I spent more hours at the library and less hour working, but I got less grades than my classmates because I had a disability. But even within the population of students with disabilities, I was further kind of in the backside because they were busy finding resources for some groups within the community that I come from. But for me personally, I just didn't have the organization to support me. So having this network will be something that will support us having access to fair opportunities, equal opportunities to others. So I think I will end my talk here and look forward to talking to you more after
Great.
my.
Great. Thank you so much, Osman, for being brave and for sharing some of your experiences with us. I think we'll discuss more when we come to the discussion session. So next on, I'll invite Aletta van der Bosch to come and share what she has prepared for us. Over to you, Aletta.
Thanks for the invite of being here. I really appreciate that. I also do appreciate that I come from a background who's probably very fortunate. I'm from Europe. We came to New Zealand 14 years ago, And basically only because we loved the country, we came on holiday here and I loved it so much. And I was like, yeah, this is where I want to live. So very opportunistic. Ever since, I already was a counselor in the Netherlands, did lots of family support and one-on-one counseling with children and teenagers. And when I moved to New Zealand, I started working at Children's Autism Foundation, which doesn't exist anymore. But that was a small organization supporting families, lots of families actually going through new diagnoses or going through the process, helping that process happening, especially for those people struggling to access. And from there, I've worked there a number of years, and now I'm only doing work through my own practice. So I'm in private practice doing counseling, doing family support, doing lots of professional development in schools and in other organizations, so mental health and education. So I'm probably somewhere in a school every week to talk about autism and neurodiversity, which I love. I like to do that. I like to tell other people what they should know and what they should take into account. And I think it's really important to tackle that in the educational system because there's still lots to learn. And I do quite a bit of community stuff as well. Maybe briefly do the next slide, Rachel, which I probably should have done before because I think that it's such a nice thing to show the difference between here we come from this very, very tiny little country, the Netherlands, as far as you can go in the world. And otherwise you're on your way back, I think, if you go any further. To New Zealand, and we're coming from this tiny flat country to this beautiful mountaineering country where I spend lots of my free time in. So very, very happy here, but also, realizing how big the difference is between living in Europe and living in New Zealand, because organization-wise, I think Europe has it very good. Can we go to the next slide? So I want to say a few things about what I think about neurodiversity, because I think that, not just me think that, but I think that it's important to recognize that being neurodivergent is not the problem. Being neurodivergent is actually quite important. It does, however, influence how people think and how people process the world around them. That's something that we need to learn about. But there's nothing wrong with being neurodivergent. There's nothing wrong about being autistic or any of the other neurodiversities. And it's pretty simple, simply the same as biodiversity. If the world would not have biodiversity, it was really going bad in the world. So we need a diversity of brains, and definitely when we think about neurodiversity, they come with some amazing strengths. So can we go to the next slide, Rachel? So just briefly, so that we keep focus on that, because I think if anything points out in that direction, I think we need to keep focusing on strength. And, in general, we know that, most people who are neurodivergent, are really good with attention to details. That's a massive skill, and we see that skill back in all levels of work. We see that skill, of course, back in the whole computer sector, but there is lots of other sectors where that happens as well. Most of them are very visual thinkers. They often have these massive passions and intense interests, which I think, if you want to find a connection with an autistic person, that's the first thing to start with. They're very creative. They're out-of-the-box thinkers, and for some people, they would actually say, I don't have a box at all, which is really cool because it creates lots of creative people. The one thing that we know more and more about, and that is something that we're focusing more and more about, is on the things on what we call hyperfocus. That's an ability that we don't have as neurotypical person, because we get distracted by all sorts of things. We can't do things for a long time. But if you have autism or ADHD and some of the other neurodiversities, the hyperfocus is a massive, massive skill to have. And they're actually actively seeking people with that skill in job types. And they're quite reliable and super honest, and that's something that lots of parents will have opinions about, but in itself, I think it's a super refreshing thing. So this is my last minute, so I take one last minute to talk about supporting autistic people, because that question has come up. So in my last slide, so I think that really important to realize is that the problem is not in the autistic person or in a neurodivergent person. They do not need counseling. They do not need a lot of things to heal or to change. The problem is that society has massive expectations that are usually creating quite a bit of issues. So the neurotypical expectations are a bigger problem, leading to a lot of masking, which I think in my work, I think unmasking is a really, really big thing. So I have to finish here. I knew this was going to happen, Rachel, but I think it's good for people to just read this and listen to this and know what to focus on.
Amazing. Thanks, Aletta. It's nice and short and sweet. I think you got all of the key points that will get us maybe thinking and, encourage discussion. Next up is LaShawn Paramal. Over to you, LaShawn.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the privilege and the honor to be able to share with you this evening. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from South Africa. My family and I moved to New Zealand about 12 years ago. And I was trained in social work and psychology. And throughout most of my career, I've been working with children, families, with teens, and in a counseling as well as a community basis. And it was actually throughout my career that I noticed that there were some individuals who were different, which I couldn't understand even in the work with them, in terms of being able to support their needs and be able to fully allow all resources to work for the best for them. And that's where I actually came across neurodiversity and autism, and suddenly a lot of pieces kind of fell into place. And that was really the start of my journey. I had the privilege of working in multiple settings like pediatrics, Starship Hospital, child and adolescent mental health for a number of years. And I currently work as a behavior specialist at Explore Specialist Services with people who have disabilities. And I also have a part-time private practice where I work with individuals, neurodivergent individuals who might require counseling or psychotherapy. I'm also involved in assessing for autism and ADHD, and based on just working with individuals over multiple years, been able to understand the variations that come with people who are neurodivergent. As much as we'd like to understand autism or ADHD and particular types of traits, each person is so individual, and that's the wonderful part of it. For the rest of the presentation today, I'm going to be focusing quickly on three key areas. The one is on assessment. The second one is on counseling or psychotherapy and a neuroaffirming approach to it. And the third part is on family. And so, and hopefully this will just give some good points to think about. We might not be able to cover everything in detail, but at least be able to stir some motivation maybe and understanding this area. So it's great to follow after Aletta, because she did a lovely presentation on neurodiversity and explaining that. And I'd like to just focus on the implications for immigrants, especially to New Zealand. So one of the things that's currently in the news is around the visa applications for people coming into New Zealand. And if there's a member of the family who's considered as profoundly cognitively challenged or disabled, there's the new law that's is being discussed is possibly about not allowing them to have a visa. And it's simply thinking about the the burden of cost to the state and what that means. There is another part, though, that, you know, the people who are coming into the country bring valuable skills and knowledge. And so where's the balance in terms of that? And some families are able to care for their individuals. There's also the cost of immigrating. Anybody who's coming to New Zealand know that it's a cost to leave their country of origin and come through. And when you become aware that assessment is needed, it's hard to actually pay for that if it's not through the public health system. You know, whether you're an adult or a child, there is a cost to that assessment process. And sometimes with neurodiversity, it's not just one place. You need an educational psychologist for learning disorders. You might need a psychiatrist or some other clinician for another type of mental health related issue. And so it's multiple clinicians, multiple professionals, multiple costs. And it's a burden that the family has to carry. Some other implications is that we're fortunate in New Zealand that there's a growing awareness around neurodiversity, even the ability to share and celebrate this week. However, in many other countries around the world, that awareness is not at the same level. And when you even talk about, for example, autism, it's not the Asperger's type of autism is not considered, you know, thinking about people who are profoundly disabled. So there are quite a few different aspects to it. It's language as well when involved in assessing. You know, some people, the system is completely dependent on English. And there are some people who English is not their first language and able to clearly clarify their thoughts. And with autism, there's a social communication aspect to it as well. For neuroaffirming practice, it's important that you know, counselors and psychotherapists, etc., are able to understand neurodiversity and then be flexible with using their skills and knowledge to meet a person's need. Unfortunately, there's no manualized approach that's going to really work, but it's understanding the uniqueness of a person. And so that's an important thing. The double empathy part is really important. Be willing to learn and understand. Be open. Sorry, I've run out of time, but I'm gonna go. The last part is I'll just mention that it has a profound impact on families. When there's no diagnosis or clarity, it puts stress on relationships, the impact on employment, education, parenting, and even lifestyles. So I guess there's, you know, being neurodivergent does not necessarily mean that you have to have a poorer quality of life. You know, every person deserves to flourish. And we hope that our systems and resources will be able to support people much more in coming years. Thank you for the opportunity.
I was saying thanks so much, LeSean. I think we'll need to maybe arrange a longer session to go through some of these pieces of very important information. And I think it's very important that you talk about the changing immigration settings. And that is really important because already before the settings had changed, it's one of those things that I found in my research that, you know, was very concerning for parents. So now if it's changing again, then it means it's going to be even tougher for families. But thank you for bringing that up. So I'll take this opportunity to invite our last speaker for the day, for this evening, who's Karina Maghadi. Over to you, Karina.
Thank you. Kia ora, everyone. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I really acknowledge Rachel's vision and knowing that these conversations are vital, and also all the work that she's put in to make this conversation happen tonight. I'm Karina. It's just me, no slides. I've been many things: a gymnast, a ballerina, a medical doctor, an academic, and someone who has worked in many different quarters of health systems, both in New Zealand and abroad. And I now channel my time and my energy into supporting best experience and outcomes for neurodiverse children and their families. And I do this because I'm a parent of a young autistic child. So my son is now 7 years old, and he was diagnosed with severe autism when he was a little over a year and a half. And it changed me and my life in ways that I could not have foreseen. So I left my paid job, I left my career to go in to try and support him to be the best version of himself. And I'm delighted to report that he's thriving. Unfortunately, this progress happened despite the systems that exist to serve him. So my son, like so many others, was given a lifelong and life-changing diagnosis. And our experience was that he was then effectively sent out of the door without a plan. And at the time, it was like being thrust out into a deep, dark ocean in the middle of the night with no flotation devices, no navigational tools, and being told to survive until we were seen again in a year's time. And we've since encountered support systems that are absolutely well-meaning, but nearly impossible to navigate. Systems that often focus on proving activity rather than delivering the outcomes that matter most to families. And systems that are often designed with clinicians' priorities at the forefront of their minds. And they don't always have the concept of the reality of families' daily lives. So I stand here and say, with full disclosure, I'm no expert in autism, but I've become the world-leading expert in my autistic son. And along the way, I've learned many things, including how important it is to see the person and not the label. I've learned that amazing things are possible for our amazing children, and especially so when we invest heavily in early intervention. I've learned that the coin has two sides, the absolutely magnificent gift and sometimes what that gift costs. And I've learned that the challenges are complex, even paradoxical at times. So, for example, autism is often a hidden disability, but then we also have situations where if autism is seen, it's often viewed through the lens of narrow and outdated stereotypes, or a lens that applies what Michael Gerson calls the soft bigotry of low expectations. And I really come to believe that one way to honour neurodiversity is by supporting people to become all they're capable of. And we do this primarily through a strengths-based approach. So over the journey, I've had countless conversations with parents like me who share an eerily similar version of my tale. The details are different because every person and their culture and their context and their needs are different. But the principles that sit beneath the core challenges are almost universal. So that story led me to a very unexpected place. And I recently launched a new publication called NeuroThrive on Substack. It's a free, short, weekly publication that's designed for busy parents of children with additional needs, as well as those who are otherwise supporting neurodiverse children, such as clinicians, educators, policymakers, and so on. And I use elements of my story to highlight some common experiences of what it's like to support a young neurodiverse person. And I share some thoughts from my perspective around what needs to change at a system level to improve outcomes for families who are still behind us in the line. So the more I learn about autism and neurodiversity, the more I realise I don't know. But something I've really come to know is that a key commonality amongst families like mine is the experience of feeling lost, confused, and often quite alone as we navigate this journey. It can be profoundly isolating, no matter our background or our broader circumstances. And I, for one, found it very challenging. But in time, I've really come to appreciate those game-changing words. You're not alone. And for that reason and many others, it's so great to be part of this wonderful community this evening, because it's a community whose existence really reinforces that crucial message. So again, thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Karina, for sharing your life journey with us, your son's journey with us. I think there's a lot of learning out of that experience, just how, I guess, how challenging the systems are to navigate. as much as, you know, services could be available, but just getting the support that's required for any particular individual is quite challenging. So yes, thank you so much for sharing with us. So yeah, people in the audience, please feel free to post any questions in the chat box. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat with everyone tab. If you have any questions or, you know, would need clarification on some of the things that have been spoken of, please do type it in the chat. So beforehand, I think when you were registering, some of you did share a few questions to direct to the panel. So I think those are some of the questions that I'll just direct to the relevant people at this point. But in the meantime, please do post more questions. This one comes to you, LaShawn. So the audience are interested to know about diagnosis. So how early can autism be diagnosed? Also, how does that work in adults?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Autism can be identified from as young as 1 year old, you know, right through to adulthood, and even older persons as well. So there's a great tools that has been developed in Australasia, ASD Detect, especially for younger children, which helps to kind of identify traits. In the assessment process, having done quite a few assessments over the last few years, you can see that mums and dads, families are actually picking up traits from quite an early age. And even when children meet their developmental milestones, parents are noting that there's something different already. And it's really about being able to identify the parent story and put that into the picture around autism. So it can be done from quite an early age. Yeah. Yeah. For adults, the criteria remains the same across all age groups. So for autism, there's 3 key areas. One is around social communication. So it's not just about a person being nonverbal or communicating without language, but it's how communication happens in a social manner. That's a key area. The second part is around whether interaction happens with someone. They're able to do something together, play with someone, work cooperatively with someone. And the third key area is around behaviors that might be repetitive for maybe a calming purpose or for a stimulating purpose. And there could be a very key sensory related area, sensitivity there. So some individuals have amazingly sensitive hearing, vision, you know, even from a touch perspective, you know, noticing things very, very more easily than others. And so when you put all of those different traits together, it then can lead to autism.
That's great, LaShawn. Thanks for sharing. But in terms of getting that, I guess, access to have that identification or go through that process as an adult, how does that work?
Yeah, unfortunately, at the moment in the public health system, there's not any capacity to do that. So most individuals have to go privately. And so being able to find someone who's qualified in autism assessment or experience, and then be able to do that privately. So Autism New Zealand on their website has a list of assessors as well, and organizations that can be contacted. So those have been screened and I think can be trusted as well. There are some others that are not listed there who have also a good reputation and capacity to be able to do that as well. Yeah. The biggest thing was mentioned earlier on is a cost factor. So at the moment, if we had to consider it as like a market, an assessment market, the market rates are quite high. And in some ways that the system needs to changed so that people can access that easily. So that's
Yep, that's great. Thanks, LaShawn. And just one last question on this matter as well. So how is it? Can I just walk, just look for a particular service provider and walk directly to them, or do I need to have a referral from my GP to be able to get this assessment done as an adult?
For most organizations in private practice, I think you can self-refer. It would be useful though to be able to talk to someone. There are some GPs who are familiar with autism, but not all are. And unfortunately, I've also come across where some GPs have said, no, it's not autism, it's not ADHD. But when you've done further detailed screening, you actually see that it's not about what you can observe outwardly. There's also other factors that needs to be considered.
Yeah.
So there are quite useful screening tools. Autism New Zealand, ADHD New Zealand have screening tools. Dyslexia, the International Organization for Dyslexia, is on their website. So people can screen, and based on that, at least get some direction and say, it's possibly autism, and let me self-refer.
Great. Thanks so much, LaShawn. I think there's a lot of learning there.
Can I add one thing there, Rachel?
Yes, please.
One thing when it comes to diagnosis, because that's what I encountered quite a bit with families, is that if you can, and you go to the GP because you want to get a referral especially for children, often that comes after you have had discussions with your early childhood provider, or with the classroom teachers, or with the school. And then schools are very happy if you go to the GP and make sure that you get some more information about what's going on with your child. But what is very helpful for GPs is to get information from the school. And that's also important for pediatricians and psychiatrists. So if schools are worried or seeing red flags or seeing things that are different, very standing out from from development or from other children, then let school put some pointers on paper. Because when you as parents sit in a GP office for 5 minutes and you have to tell all these things, it's sometimes really hard. But it's really nice if you then just have that on paper. It will help you.
Great. Thank you, Aletta. The next question is directed to Osman. So through your research and also through your own experiences, what barriers do migrant communities face when accessing support for neurodivergent children? And I think this also does extend to children with other disabilities.
Oh, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Realization I had was in my research, and so the parents of people with disabilities, although they knew their children best, they were not the informant of the support services. Like they didn't have any. They were not consulted in decision making. They were not given the choice to manage their own resources. In theory, in the policy, yes, maybe there are ways they can. But in terms of their everyday life, they're just not accessing this support. It seemed like organizations have already had their own design and way of doing things, and they have been for the last 20 years, and they're just not willing to change. And so they exclude the parents' fear and anxiety about who is going to look after their children, who is all these questions parents have. They just seem to be isolated from the system just because disability organizations themselves are excluding the parents. And even the medical doctors sometimes don't even consider what the the parents, the knowledge that the parents had about their children. So it was more about a community, a group of people who are trained in something, talking to each other, but excluding the parents who have the most, who have the knowledge about their own children and how to go forward. So just the lack of connection, I think, or the lack of there's a gap between parents and organizations at the systemic level that I thought was one of the main reasons for people to I don't know if that's answering the question, but I want to be brief.
Yeah, no, I think it is. Thanks, Osman. And I was just scrolling through the chat. So somebody is wanting to hear more, if you're comfortable sharing, about how you've managed to navigate your challenges, going through tertiary education. So you did mention quite a lot of struggles in that space, but I just want to commend you for just coming through with it, and also even enrolling for a PhD. I think that's really commendable, given all of the challenges that you have been talking about. So somebody's wanting to find out from you, if you're comfortable sharing, what are some of those coping mechanisms, or what were some of those strategies that you found helpful, to go through all of the learning that you've done?
I just had to advocate for myself. I had to realize that it's not my mistake. It's not my problem. I'm not the problem. And so how I coped with this, I just had to make myself heard. And then I navigated through the university services. And didn't work out. I tried again and again and again. And at some point it worked. So just never give up. Just keep trying, working. And never think it's your problem. It's a systemic issue. It's the university's problem, not my problem. That's how I thought about this. Coping is really about just being patient also. Being patient, and don't react. Don't get angry and react to things. Just maybe put some thinking to it. This is what I did. I just put some thinking to it, and I just kept going back and back again and again, and after 2,000 times it worked for me. So I still don't know if that answered the question, but
it does. It does. I think it's the try again, right? And I think it's just an indication of the way that systems don't work, because ideally you shouldn't be trying so hard, to get something that rightly is meant to be provided for you. So thank you so much, Osman, for sharing that with us. Karina, this one's directed to you, and I think it also lines up quite well with a question in the chat. So I was going to ask you, how can families of neurodivergent children prepare them for independence and meaningful participation in the society? And Ngozi in the chat wanted to know, how did you help your child make sense of their diagnosis? I know he's only 7, but then maybe you could speak to that as well.
Sure. So I think, as I alluded to in my talk, the strengths and struggles differ across individuals, along with families' values, their priorities, their goals, and their broader context. So I think one of the first things I would say in response to the first question is I don't believe there's any one plan, but I'm really happy to share some high-level principles that may be useful to consider that can set people up to thrive. My mind actually goes to a slightly different place as I hear the question, and I think it's that we need to flip the question. It's not what we need to do, it's how society needs to change to better accommodate, recognise and celebrate these strengths. But to come back to the original question through the original lens, some high-level principles. 1, see the person, not the label. 2, follow their strengths to meet their needs. And when I think about strengths, I think about their talents and also their interests. That's your in to take off to some amazing places. It really helps when you can start early, and amazing outcomes are possible at any time. I'm a safety first person. I'm also a medical doctor by background, so I'm inclined to follow the evidence. There is unfortunately a lot of interesting stuff out there that desperate parents can fall into, where sometimes support systems don't provide timely input. But I think safety first is really important, and really arming yourself with good knowledge around what can help. For us, it really worked to set clear goals, and for us, our number one goal with our child was to support him to be the best version of himself. And regular review and refinement of those goals and the various supports that you put in place to help your child is really appropriate, because this is a mobile landscape. Things will change, and ensuring that you're adapting to meet your changing child and their changing needs is really critical. We ignored advice that said do this or that. Often we needed to use the word and a range of techniques and inputs to support our son. It really had a synergistic effect for him. But to come back to, I think, but maybe it's a bit of a philosophical answer to the question, but I think it's really important to remember that a person's diagnosis is often far less limiting than the impact of societal bias and our current state of understanding. And I think with that in mind, within our family, we kind of set some ground rules for how we would approach supporting our son. And one of those things was that whatever we pursued, it would add to him. So we were very clear that any supportive interventions would not take away any of the unique elements that make him him. So anything that we did to support him was about adding to him, to setting him up to pursue his interests and live his most fulfilled life. But we weren't interested in taking anything away, removing traits or things that others were still coming to understand and accept for him. And I think part of that, what was really key for us, was making a distinction between what I would frame differences and challenges. So for us, the differences were things to be celebrated, the things that made him him. We wanted to nourish those and shout them from the rooftops. But the things that got in the way of him living his best life, those we framed as challenges, and those were very, clear that we wanted to support him to move those challenges out of the way as much as possible.
Right.
And for our family, that has worked.
Great. Thanks, Karina, for sharing that detail. I know it wouldn't be an easy sharing, but we appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm hoping that we're all getting a piece from that. Aletta, we have a few more minutes to go, and I'm just going to direct this question to you. Should neurodivergence be disclosed to an employer? Or if it's at university, should you, or any other place? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, my biggest thing with this is safety. So safety is, of course, a bit of a tricky one, because you're only going to disclose if you know that it's safe enough, that it's received positively, that it's received with care, and that it's received with what can we do to make your life as good as possible here. So if someone doesn't feel any of these things, I don't think you should disclose, because that's a risk for your own mental health. You could wonder if you want to work there, but okay, not everyone has that choice. I often go for what I would call like partial disclosure. So if you don't want to disclose that you are autistic, for instance, you could disclose that, like, I work a lot better if you tell me the steps of what I need to do today. or I work a lot better if you write it down, or I work a lot better if you talk to me one-on-one so that I can make notes, or things like that, because that would then be like just the things that you need, instead of like, okay, this is autism, and now I hope you understand what that means. And I think in that journey, the biggest the biggest thing that I find happening is that with some, especially with teenagers, is like it's so super dependent what message the child or the teenager or the adult has got from society, got from their family, got from their teachers, in how okay it is to be autistic. Because if they somewhere feel that it's not okay, they will struggle big time to self-advocate for themselves as well, because they will mask like crazy to do well and to pretend to be okay, and they will not ask for support. So that is my biggest thing in my support as well, is to make sure that people learn to self-advocate. But then in order to do so, you need to accept that this is who you are, and that's perfectly fine.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Aletta, for that. So yeah, I've learned something, partial disclosure. So even for, I think that would work for everybody else, wouldn't it? Just, making it clear what works for you, or what will make you, perform better at work or at school. But yeah, thank you so much. So I think we've come to the end of our time. So we still have unanswered questions in the chat. So what we'll do is take these to our panel to respond, and then we'll share these. So if you've registered to attend, we'll just send these out to you, the responses out to you. And I think we'll also share contact details in case you want more information. Thanks, LaShawn, for responding to that question from Abdi. I think that's well appreciated. So I just want to take this time to thank LaShawn, Karina, Aletta, and Osman for just gifting us your time and your experience and your expertise. I think that's very much appreciated. So yeah, thank you to everybody for coming through. Please join me in this karakia to close. Hei noi tato, tutau mai runga, tutau mai raro, tutau mai roto, tutau mai iwaho, kia to te maori tu, te maori ora ki te kato. Humie huie tai kie. So thank you, everyone. Keep your eyes open. I think we might be having another one soon, because I think we didn't have enough time to go through all of those very important, I think, discussion points. As you can see, we haven't been able to even respond to all the questions, but as a first, I think this has been well done. Thank you all for coming. Have a pleasant evening.